welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. And speaking of pictures, some of you have already been doing that. Let's begin with this one from Rumuola in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. That's the capital, showing this car involved in an accident. Thankfully, there was no casualty. Our next report is from the East-West Road in Yenagoa, the Bayelsa State capital. Our eyewitness reporter says the state of the road is giving residents and motorists a tough time, and he appeals to the relevant authorities to fix the road. Finally is this one from Lokoja, the Kogi State capital, showing the poor state of the road, which our eyewitness reporter says is the only road in the town which stretches through the state capital. He says the bad road is causing great hardship to both residents and motorists. And thanks so much for sending in all your pictures, and do remember that you can also be an eyewitness reporter from anywhere in the world. Just download the free Channels TV app. Let's move on, and right after the business meeting that the President had with the UN Secretary General and his team, he performed one more duty. That's the presentation of the document of the agreement between Channels Television and the United Nations Department of Public Information. The UN scribe told the chairman, CEO of Channels Television, Mr. John Momoh, that the UN expects strict adherence to the content of the broadcast partnership. In his response, Mr. Momoh gave assurances that Channels Television will align with the maxim at the UN website, which reads, quote, "We got it all covered," end of quote. A group photograph of both parties concluded the event.
Mr. John Momoh, it's a great pleasure for me to deliver a very important project which have been discussing and agreed between the Department of Public Information of the United Nations and the Channels Television. And I hope that through this joint project, we'll be able to convey the good messages to many people around the world. I hope also that UN TV will be able to have a good cooperation with the Channels TV. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank
you. Pleasure. Thank you. Just want to say, Secretary General, that I'm very delighted. On behalf of Channels TV, I'd like to thank you and the United Nations and all those who have taken part in making sure that the MOU came about. We're very, very, very happy to be in this partnership, and rest assured that we will be aligned with the maxim that you have on the website, which says we've got it all covered. That's by the United Nations. Channels has got it all covered for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You don't get this twice.
Indeed, there we have the presentation of the document of agreement between Channels Television and the United Nations Department of Public Information. Now, the UN Secretary General's visit coincides with the 4th anniversary of the deadly attack of the organization's office here in Nigeria. It was an attack that caught the attention of the global community and kept people asking questions about the security situation in the nation and the manner in which the dastardly act was executed. In this report, our correspondent Seun Okimbaloye captures the events of that day.
Friday, August 26, 2011. It is just a few minutes after 11 a.m. The United Nations building at the heart of the nation's capital, Abuja, was attacked. Eyewitnesses say a car rammed into the building through the main gates of the UN office, and then the loud explosion which tore the 3-story building apart. Shock gripped those who witnessed the attack, as staff of the United Nations are totally unsettled as they look helpless in the sudden occurrence. Government officials, emergency operatives and security personnel are all on hand to assess the situation. Help is called.
We need body bags. We need stretchers. We need stretchers. We need spine boards.
In time, help arrived, but the deed was already done. 21 people were said to have been killed in the attack, while over 60 people injured. The attack was seen as one done to the global community on a Nigerian soil. It is one attack too many. The Nigerian government got the sign definitely ominous. The UN building bomb attack was an assault on humanity, and it is 4 years this month since the deadly attack. Seun Akimbale, Channels Television News.
All right, now let's give you a bit more insight into Mr. Ban's visit. Let's take you live to Abuja, where our correspondent Amarachi Ubani is standing by. Hey, Amara.
Hi, Gemma. Welcome to Abuja. I have with me in the studio the Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund, Professor Babatunde Oshotimeng. Professor, you're welcome to the News at 10.
Thank you very much.
You've been on the team with the UN Secretary General and you've accompanied him to all of the meetings that he's had during his visits to Nigeria. Can you give us a summary of what this means to the visit, what it means to both Nigeria and to the United Nations?
I think and I believe that Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, decided to come to Nigeria ahead of the September meetings in New York so that he can actually bond with President Buhari. President Buhari started office in May, and he's in the process of establishing his government. And the United Nations had stood behind Nigeria before, during, and after the elections. I think the Secretary General wanted to come to take this further and addressing several issues in terms of peace and development, peace and security and development. And so that actually was why we came.
And Mr. Ban has spoken about, very highly commended Nigeria on the war against terror. He's talked about fighting it with a human face. What else is the UN doing to help Nigeria in this, to assist Nigeria in the fight against insurgency?
Oh, there are two parts to this, and I think that we need to look at it to understand what the UN is capable of doing. The UN is capable of advocating assistance to Nigeria to enable it, prosecute a military option. That is, intelligence, training, logistic support, equipment support, to enable the Nigerian armed forces be fit for purpose to be able to do what they have to do. But beyond that, there is also the value that the UN can add in actually ensuring that those who have been affected by the Boko Haram insurgency, either within the 6 states of the Northeast or outside of it, because as you know, some of the people were abducted, a few of them have come back, and some, we now know there are many people in camps in the Northeast. In that kind of circumstance, we have to look after their security, their food security, their health and hygiene, water and sanitation, reproductive health, because we saw today, and I know for a fact, working as UNFPA Executive Director, that many of the girls were pregnant. And so you needed to also offer service to them and be sure that they can deliver properly and not suffer any consequence. So it's a wide range of things in terms of the development part of it. But we cannot and should not separate what we do for peace and security from development, because in the long term, what you want to do is to build resilience in those communities and livelihood. So I think that's where the UN can come in and make sure that they also would ensure they can bring other partners, civil society, private sector, and foundations to assist Nigeria to be able to bring that part of Nigeria into function again.
There's also been the push for sustainable development and climate change. We had Mr. Ban talk about the 2030 deadline for the sustainable development goals, and also urging state governors to realize their key role in this. How can governments help to increase awareness and fully implement the sustainable development goals, at least attain it before that time?
Good. I think it's important for all of us to also frame that very well, because 2015 is the end of what we knew as the Millennium Development Goals, and 2015 actually ends at a time, it would end, with us realizing that some of the development goals which were fixed in 2000, we are not meeting them. And so in providing and constructing the new sustainable development goals, we actually folded in that unfinished business of the Millennium Development Goals. So it is, in a sense, we have to understand that is so. But we went beyond that to include not just health education, but also include issues of climate, governance, and all the other things that actually make for a holistic development in a sustainable way. The second point about the Sustainable Development Goals, which I need to point out, is that whereas the MDGs, which we've been running for 15 years, actually were addressing issues in the developing world, with the Sustainable Development Goals is universal. Everybody is going to be involved. So the United Nations sees itself as being a pivot to ensure that we can provide for governments, both national and subnational in Nigeria, where you actually do have states that are almost equal size, if not larger, than other countries around the world. And so working with them, we can help them to plan, implement, evaluate, redirect investments so that everybody would benefit from development.
Professor, thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've been speaking with the Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund, Professor Babatunde Oshotimeng. And in part 2, after the break, NLNG constructs a laboratory in University of Nigeria in Nsukka. That's in a moment. Please join us again.